Hello, biology students. We're going to be talking about the cell cycle. What's the life of a cell like? So the life of a cell starts with this in-between phase called interphase. This is when the cell does all of its normal chemical reactions. We call that metabolic processes. Anything that it would do every day normally. And really, the important thing is the cell grows. It grows a lot, and it also duplicates its DNA. Meaning it makes two identical DNA copies during this part of the cell cycle. We've learned about how DNA makes copies. So the cell gets bigger and it copies itself. Notice that when the cell is making those DNA copies, the DNA goes from looking like half a butterfly to looking like a full butterfly. All right? So this part is super long. Interphase is actually 3/4 or longer of the overall life of the cell. Notice that it grows, the DNA duplicates, and it grows more. That is a long time for the cell. It's like most of the time. The next part we hear about all the time, it's mitosis, also called mitotic phase or M phase. This is when the nucleus or those DNA or chromosomes divide. This is a really complicated dance, and we're going to learn about it in huge detail soon. But the important part is mitosis is when the nucleus and the DNA divide to actually be identical in two different cells. Not only that, the cell also has to divide. We call that cytokinesis. When the cytoplasm actually karate chops in half, right? Notice that the cytoplasm itself isn't cut yet here above in mitosis. It is here. That is cytokinesis. Cyto meaning cell or cytoplasm, kinesis meaning movement. So moving the DNA, that's mitosis. Really cutting the cell in half, that's cytokinesis. So there were three major parts: interphase, mitosis, and cytokinesis. That is the life of a cell. This last piece here, mitosis and cytokinesis, happened pretty fast. Interphase is what took the longest amount of time. The end result of this whole life of the cell is that the cell is now two cells, and they're genetically identical or the same. We call them daughter cells because they started with a parent cell and now they are kind of like offspring, daughter cells. And each has an identical set of chromosomes in the nucleus. So if this was what it was beforehand, right, during interphase, we had a duplication of the chromosomes, and then they divide. So humans have 46 chromosomes normally. They would double to be 92, and then by the end of mitosis, there'd be 46 in this cell and 46 in this cell, and they'd be exactly the same. But sometimes there's something that goes wrong in this whole process. All right? And the whole process was the cell growing and then dividing. Well, unfortunately, if it's growing and dividing in a not proper way, we call that a tumor, a mass or large growth of cells that's growing uncontrollably. We call a tumor benign if that abnormal growth of cells is still normal cells. All right? They might grow a lot but then stop growing. Malignant, though, is the bad type. Malignant means the abnormal growth of cells is actually cancerous. So sometimes we have some extra division, but the cells will realize that it's not good. And the cell will either fix the problem, which sometimes is a mutation or a typo, but sometimes this body can't catch the problem or doesn't know how. And that's when we get this uncontrollable cell growth. This all usually starts due to a mutation. When the cancer starts to spread, that malignant tumor, we call that metastasis. Usually this will happen through the bloodstream. It can also happen through the lymph nodes. Both of those are highway systems through the body. There are two major categories of treatment. One is radiation therapy. This is when we take high energy radiation and it's meant to direct very specifically at the tumor. We also could do surgical removal first, if that's even possible. That's usually the best option because radiation therapy is not very fun and it's not necessarily cheap. Chemotherapy is usually the last option because it doesn't only affect the cancer cells, it often affects other cells in the body because it will disrupt any cell that's going through cell division. But all of my cells go through cell division. My hair is always growing. My stomach always needs new lining. And because of that, my hair follicles and my stomach cells get affected, especially by chemotherapy, which is why people lose their hair and they get very nauseous when they're on chemotherapy. We're going to be learning a lot more about cell cycle and cancer in class. Great job starting, guys.